Good evening, and welcome back. Tonight, the ocean remembers. It remembers a world that no longer breathes above the waves. A city bathed in morning gold, where towers shimmered like glass, and the air hummed with a song older than wind itself. This is the mysterious story of Atlantis. Before we begin, if you're listening from a different country, tell me your country and the time where you are down below in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from. And if this story helps you relax, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who loves a good bedtime tale. Your support is honestly what motivates me to keep creating these magical and sometimes spooky stories for everyone. Beneath the slow light of an ancient sun, before any name was carved into history, the ocean parted its veil of silver mist to reveal something divine. The first rays of dawn spilled over turquoise water, touching the white stone terraces of Atlantis. The city rose in perfect symmetry, built in circles that rippled outward like the memory of a dropped pearl. Golden bridges arched across canals that reflected the sky so clearly it seemed the heavens themselves had settled on earth. The smell of salt and morning jasmine drifted through the air, mingling with the faint metallic scent of seawater warming against crystal walls. The people of Atlantis awoke with the sun. Their garments shimmered like woven light, their voices soft and low, echoing across courtyards lined with marble fountains. The sound of running water filled the streets. Gentle streams flowing from carved lion heads, feeding gardens where violet flowers opened to drink the light. Somewhere a wind chime sang, delicate notes like glass kissing glass. The city itself seemed alive, pulsing with quiet joy. And at the center of it all stood the high tower, the heart of Atlantis. From its topmost spire, light radiated into the sea, forming a halo that could be seen from the horizon. Sailors who ventured close in later centuries would call it the sun beneath the sea. But in those days, it was simply home. Within that light, a great crystal pulsed, the heart of the ocean, said to be a gift from the gods themselves. Some whispered it was not a crystal at all, but a living being, a thought made solid, breathing in rhythm with the tides. As the city stirred, the ocean responded. Waves brushed gently against its white shores, not in anger, but affection, as though the sea loved the city it once cradled in its depths. Fish of impossible colors darted beneath bridges, their scales reflecting rainbows that danced across the walls. The air was filled with the soft murmur of prayers, songs of gratitude, sung not to conquer the sea, but to live beside it. Atlantis was harmony, and yet harmony has a heartbeat that can be broken. Deep beneath the shining towers, in chambers carved of coral and stone, there were whispers of something stirring. Some said the heart had begun to glow brighter at night, humming with a deeper tone, as though it dreamed of something it could not reach. Others claimed the light was speaking to them, calling to their minds in their sleep, but no one dared to question the gods. Not yet. The ocean wind carried scents of copper and ozone, the smell of rain not yet fallen. It brushed against the hands of artisans shaping crystal into lenses, philosophers tracing stars in pools of reflected moonlight, children chasing beams of light that flickered like butterflies. Life thrived in perfect rhythm, every motion in tune with the song of the sea. And somewhere, on a balcony high above the ocean, the high oracle stood in silence. Her silver hair moved like threads of water, her eyes closed as she listened to the pulse of the world. She felt the tremor, faint, almost nothing, but in the stillness of her heart she knew it was not the ocean's rhythm she heard. It was something new, something rising. The light of Atlantis glowed brighter that night, burning with a beauty that made even the stars pause. But beauty has always been the first note in every tragedy. The waves continued to whisper, the air shimmered, and the ocean remembered.
Atlantis was not born from stone or sand, but from understanding. Its people believed the sea was alive, not merely water, but thought, breath, memory. And so they built their city not to stand against the tide, but with it. The marble of their temples was infused with sea quartz, each wall humming faintly when the wind passed. It was said that if one pressed a hand to the surface, they could feel a pulse, gentle, steady, like the heartbeat of a sleeping god. At dawn, sunlight scattered across the city's canals, turning the water into liquid gold. The smell of salt and fresh bread drifted through the air as merchants opened their stalls. Birds with sapphire feathers glided between towers, their cries sharp but melodic, echoing softly between the arches. Children ran barefoot along mosaic walkways, their laughter blending with the soft clinking of wind bells that hung above every doorway. Every sound was music, the gentle rhythm of oars against the current, the low hum of prayer, the faint whisper of light crystals vibrating in harmony with the ocean floor. To live in Atlantis was to breathe beauty so constant it became the air itself. The people did not see it as luxury, it was simply truth. The builders, as they were called, were the keepers of that truth. They wore robes of ivory and blue, their hands stained with the glow of the crystals they worked with. They believed light was a language, that it could heal, speak, even think. Deep in the heart of the city, inside a vast circular chamber called the Hall of Reflections, they studied the Great Heart, the immense crystal that floated at the city's center, suspended by pure energy. It pulsed like something alive, responding to thought more than touch. When one stood before it, the air grew warmer, shimmering softly, carrying the scent of rain and warm stone. But something was changing. The builders noticed the crystal's hum deepening, its tone thicker, slower, almost mournful. At first they thought it a blessing that the heart was evolving, expanding its mind. But one among them, Lyron, a young philosopher whose eyes were the color of deep water, began to feel unease. He heard the hum in his dreams. Sometimes it formed words, not words of gods, but of warning. One night, under a violet moon, Lyron stood on the balcony overlooking the glowing canals. The air was heavy with the scent of seaweed and ozone. The waves brushed against the shore in a restless rhythm. He felt a strange vibration beneath his feet, like the ground itself was breathing too fast. He looked toward the high tower where the light of the heart pulsed, faster now, more erratic.
"Do you feel it too?" came a voice behind him, soft, trembling. It was Soraya, one of the High Oracle's attendants. Her eyes shimmered like wet pearls in the moonlight. "The sea," she whispered. "It listens, but tonight it listens too closely." Lirin turned to her, the warm air brushing against his face like a sigh. "Perhaps it's trying to speak," he said quietly. "Or perhaps it's beginning to remember something it was meant to forget." The wind shifted, carrying a chill, faint, like the breath of a storm far beyond the horizon. The city still glowed in perfect peace, but beneath its light was a vibration no one could name. The builders continued their work, sculpting bridges that sang, towers that shimmered, vessels that hovered above the sea on waves of pure sound. Progress was their hymn. Their creations grew more wondrous, their reach more daring. And yet, the brighter the city shone, the darker the shadows beneath it became. For the ocean, though patient, does not forget. It only waits. And on the 7th night of the new moon, as the city slept beneath a blanket of silver mist, the heart's light flared, a sudden silent pulse that lit every crystal, every wall, every eye. The people woke, confused, staring out their windows as the canals shimmered like molten glass. For one brief moment, Atlantis seemed to breathe as one, the sea, the sky, and the city united in one blinding heartbeat. Then the glow faded. Silence followed. The hum returned, lower now, deeper, almost sad. The builders called it a miracle. Lirin called it a warning. And the ocean only whispered. It whispered of beginnings that are only endings in disguise. The heart of Atlantis lay suspended within a vast chamber carved from marble and coral, so wide and tall that its ceiling vanished into mist. Around it, water flowed in spirals through transparent channels, glowing with the rhythm of unseen tides. The air shimmered, thick with warmth, filled with a scent like lightning after rain, clean, metallic, electric. It was said that the crystal did not merely shine, it breathed. Each pulse sent waves of light across the chamber walls, painting them in ripples of gold and indigo. The builders stood before it in reverent silence, their faces lit from below, eyes reflecting the glow. They called it Corail, the pulse of the deep. Legends claimed it was born at the beginning of time, a fragment of the first star to fall into the sea. Others whispered it was the soul of the ocean itself, captured and caged when the gods gifted humankind their knowledge. No one truly knew, only that the city's power, its warmth, its very heartbeat came from this one living light. When the heart pulsed, every lantern, every crystal vein, every water channel in Atlantis responded, glowing in harmony. The city and the crystal were one body, one rhythm. The people celebrated it. But Lirin felt unease. The glow had changed. It no longer hummed in a simple tone. It murmured, layered like a chorus of distant voices beneath the waves. Sometimes, when he placed his hand on the chamber's surface, he could feel it, a
a subtle vibration that wasn't merely mechanical, but alive, aware. It felt like something inside the crystal was trying to wake. One evening, when the sky was painted in violet dusk, Lyron found himself alone in the chamber. The others had left after their daily rituals, leaving only the low sound of the heart's hum, deep and constant. The marble beneath his bare feet was cool, smooth like still water. The air held a faint fragrance of sea salt and burning oil. He stood before the crystal, its light washing over his face, and whispered, "What are you?" The glow flickered, just once, faintly, but enough to make his breath catch. Then came a vibration, not through the air, but through him. A thought that wasn't his own. A voice, quiet and fluid, like the sea murmuring across sand. "Remember." He stepped back, heart racing. The hum deepened, resonating through the floor, through the walls. He saw shapes forming within the crystal, outlines of waves, of faces, of something vast moving just beyond sight. The light shimmered like tears, and the voice came again, softer this time, almost tender. "We were never meant to be apart." Then the glow faded, leaving silence so pure it rang in his ears. When the builders returned the next morning, Lyron spoke of what he had seen, but they dismissed it as fatigue, the product of long nights and overwork. The High Council warned him gently to keep silent. To question the heart was to question the gods. And so he did, outwardly. But in the quiet hours, he wrote. His journals filled with sketches of patterns, waves, spirals, maps not of land, but of sound and memory. Meanwhile, the heart grew brighter. The light that once soothed now burned with a subtle intensity, casting sharper shadows across the city. The ocean around Atlantis glowed faintly at night, as if reflecting the pulse from below. Fishermen whispered of strange creatures surfacing in the moonlight, their eyes like silver mirrors. The sea was listening, they said, and not all who listened understood. In the Hall of Reflections, the builders gathered each dawn to measure the heart's power. They celebrated its growing strength, believing it proof of divine favor. They didn't see, or refused to see, that the crystal's rhythm no longer matched the tide. It was drifting, changing, breathing faster. Far above, the High Oracle watched from her balcony. Her long robes moved with the wind, shimmering like silk underwater. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were heavy with knowing. She had felt it too, the pulse beneath her feet that was not the ocean's. The gods, she feared, had not given Atlantis a gift, but a choice. That night, as the city slept under a sky strewn with silver stars, a storm gathered beyond the horizon. The air turned heavy, filled with the scent of rain and brine. Lightning flickered in the distance, reflected in the canals like veins of fire beneath glass. The people dreamed peacefully, unaware that the ocean was shifting its weight, restless beneath them. And deep below, in the great chamber of light, the heart pulsed once more, brighter than ever before. The walls trembled, the hum deepened into a low, resonant tone that filled the entire city, vibrating in every stone and every bone. It was not warning, it was awakening. The sea remembered, the crystal remembered, but the people, they had forgotten what the gods had asked them long ago, and the ocean never forgives what it remembers.
The dawn came soft and golden, the sea calm as glass. The city of Atlantis gleamed beneath the sunlight, a living jewel resting on the water's surface. Birds soared above its towers, their wings catching the light like shards of crystal. The air was warm, fragrant with sea jasmine and burning oil from morning lamps. But beneath the beauty, the pulse of the heart had changed. The hum was deeper now, resonating through the city like a second heartbeat. Most called it a blessing. Only a few felt the tremor of unease beneath its song. Lyron stood in the Hall of Reflections, watching the glow ripple through the marble walls. Around him, the builders chanted in unison, their voices soft, melodic, blending with the pulse of the crystal. The chamber smelled of salt and molten stone, and the air shimmered faintly, heavy with energy. He tried to steady his breathing, but the hum seemed to move inside him, through his ribs, his chest, his mind. For a moment he felt weightless, drifting in a sea of light. And in that light he saw something, not a vision, but a memory. The ocean rising, swallowing towers, stars reflected in water. Then darkness, silence. He gasped and stumbled back. The other builders turned, startled. "The heart," he whispered. "It's showing us what will come." But they only smiled, serene. "The heart shows us what we desire," said the elder builder, his voice low and calm. "You see fear because you fear your own power." That was the curse of Atlantis. They mistook warning for wonder. The High Oracle, too, had felt the shift. In the stillness of her chamber, she traced her fingers over the stone floor, feeling the faint tremor beneath. Her candles flickered, though there was no wind. The scent of salt filled the room, sharper now, almost metallic. She closed her eyes and whispered to the air, "The ocean remembers." For a moment she thought it heard it answer, a sound like distant thunder beneath the waves. But the people of Atlantis were blind to caution. They had learned to command the currents, to draw energy from the sea itself. Ships that floated without sails crossed the waters. Towers harnessed storms to power their lights. The heart made them gods among men, and they began to believe they were. Their creations grew more ambitious, their prayers less humble. The ocean, once worshipped, became their servant. Lyron tried to warn them. He spoke of balance, of the danger of taking more than the sea would give. "The heart is not ours," he said during a gathering at the tower's summit. But his voice was drowned in applause and laughter. The council thanked him for his passion and told him not to fear progress. "The gods favor us. Why else would the sea yield its power so freely?" That night, Lyron walked alone through the lower canals. The water was still, black as obsidian, reflecting the lights of the city above. The air felt thicker than usual, heavy with the scent of salts and iron. He trailed his fingers through the water, expecting coolness, but it was warm, almost feverish, and beneath his touch he felt a vibration, a steady pulse, the same rhythm as the crystal. Above, the moon was full, casting its pale light across the towers. He looked up and whispered, "If the gods gave us this gift, then why does it feel like it's watching us?" No one answered, only the wind, soft, slow, but carrying a strange low note that trembled through the air like a sigh. In the days that followed, new wonders appeared, machines that drew light from the deep sea, bridges that floated over the water, gardens where crystal vines shimmered like frozen rain. The people cheered their progress, and the builders celebrated their triumph. Yet every miracle came with a subtle cost. The tides grew stronger, the fish scarcer, the winds more restless. But no one questioned it, for beauty blinds more gently than fear. The high oracle grew ill. She spoke less, her voice faint, her eyes shadowed with sleeplessness. Once, when Sariah visited her, she found the oracle standing at the window, staring out at the sea. The room smelled of herbs and rain. "Do you hear it?" asked the oracle softly. "The ocean, it's whispering again. It remembers the first time we built too high." Sariah trembled but said nothing. The oracle smiled faintly. "Tell them to stop before the sea remembers everything." But by then, Atlantis had become unstoppable. Its lights shone brighter than the stars. Its towers touched the clouds. The heart's pulse could be heard across the entire island, deep, slow, and strangely uneven. Sometimes it skipped a beat. Sometimes, when the air was very still, the sound would echo back from beneath the ocean floor, as if something vast was calling in return. Lyron wrote in his journal, "The heart is not a gift, it is a mirror. It shows us what we are becoming." But the pages ended there. The next morning, he was gone. Some said he left the city to seek answers beyond the horizon. Others whispered he had gone beneath the sea, following the hum to its source. Whatever the truth, the ocean kept its secret, and the people of Atlantis continued to rise, not realizing that every miracle, every light, was only the surface of a sleeping storm. The sky above shimmered with gold, the water below darkened with memory, and the ocean, silent, patient, began to breathe differently.
The light of Atlantis still shines, but the ocean beneath has begun to stir. The waves grow quieter now. At first, no one noticed. The changes came like whispers, too soft to hear, too subtle to fear. A faint vibration beneath the marble streets, the air thicker, the tides slightly higher. Yet the people went on with their days, wrapped in comfort, blinded by their own brilliance. The city still glittered under the sun, but its reflection in the water began to waver, distorted by ripples that shouldn't have been there. The heart pulsed stronger now, its rhythm faster, less steady. The builders assured the council it was adapting, evolving, growing more powerful. But those who listened closely, those who felt instead of measured, heard something else beneath the hum, a dissonance, a low note of sorrow buried under the beauty. The high oracle no longer left her chamber. Her attendants found her awake at night, whispering to the sea through her window. "It remembers," she would murmur, her voice trembling. "It always remembers." The smell of salt filled the room constantly, even when no breeze blew. The candles flickered, though the air was still. Sariah, her most loyal aide, began to dream of waves swallowing towers, of the sky cracking open like glass. Outside, the ocean had begun to change color.
Fishermen returned with nets half empty, their eyes wide with stories of strange lights moving deep below. "The sea is watching," they said, "like an eye opening." The council dismissed them. "Fear makes stories," they laughed. "Atlantis makes truth." But truth has a weight, and the heavier it grows, the more it pulls everything down. The city's light, once golden and soft, became sharp, almost blinding at night. The air itself seemed to vibrate with a quiet tension, like a string drawn too tight. Children grew restless. The birds that used to sing on the towers began to disappear. Even the gardens wilted, the once fragrant air turning faintly metallic like rain trapped in stone. And then came the storm. It began without thunder, only a stillness so complete that even the sea forgot how to move. The air thickened, pressing against the skin like it held breath. Clouds gathered, dark and massive, swallowing the horizon. The scent of ozone filled every street. The people watched in awe as lightning rippled across the sky, reflecting in the canals like fire veins beneath glass. From the high tower, the heart began to glow, brighter than ever before. The builders ran to the Hall of Reflections, shouting over the rising wind. The hum had turned into a roar. The ground trembled, marble cracked, the crystal pulsed faster, 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 its rhythm wild, erratic, like a living thing gasping for air. Soraya raced to the oracle's chamber, rain lashing against her skin, her hair heavy with sea mist. The corridors echoed with the sound of rushing water, not from the canals, but from the walls themselves. "The heart is breaking," she cried. The oracle turned to her, eyes full of light, and whispered, "No, child, it's remembering." At that moment, a deep sound rolled through the earth, not thunder, not wind, but something older. The ocean rose as if pulled by an unseen hand. Waves climbed higher than the towers. The people screamed, running through the streets as water burst through the canals, smashing through the bridges that had once sung with music. The air filled with salt, with fear, with the deafening roar of the sea reclaiming its own. Lyron's name was whispered among the chaos. Some said his voice could be heard in the storm, calling out from beneath the waves. The heart's light flared one final time, blinding the sky. And in that light, the people saw, for a heartbeat, visions of their own creation reflected back at them. Cities of light, hands raised to the heavens, faces proud and shining. Then the reflection broke apart, shattering into shards of water and sound. The ocean had remembered everything. The towers of Atlantis trembled, their golden spires cracking under the weight of their own light. The streets split open, water poured in, the scent of salt grew thick and sharp, stinging the air like tears. Still, the heart pulsed, faster, desperate, as if trying to hold the city together. But the balance was gone. The bond between the sea and its creation had fractured. And in the high tower, as lightning struck its peak, the oracle stood one last time. She faced the storm with eyes full of sorrow and whispered to the wind, "Forgive us." Then came silence, a silence deeper than any sound the world had ever known. The waves rose higher. The city began to sink. The golden light dimmed, one spire at a time, until all that remained was the faint glow beneath the surface. the last heartbeat of a dream too proud to last. The ocean closed its arms around Atlantis, not in rage, but in memory, not to destroy, but to reclaim. And as the storm faded into the distance, only the whispers of the deep remained.
The light has gone dim now. The ocean lies heavy with memory. The storm had passed, but not in peace. What remained of Atlantis was drenched in a stillness too deep to bear. The air hung thick with the scent of wet stone and salt, like tears evaporating from a wound that would never close. The towers that once reached the sky now leaned and cracked, their golden tips bent beneath the weight of the sea's return. The canals had overflowed, merging into rivers that cut through the marble streets, carrying fragments of crystal, paper, and prayer toward the dark horizon. No one sang anymore. No laughter, no chanting of builders, no hum of the heart to steady their breath. The light within the great crystal had dimmed, once blinding, now flickering faintly, as though it too was afraid. The air inside the hole of reflections was damp and heavy, the walls dripping with condensation that gleamed like silver tears. The only sound was the slow, rhythmic drip of water echoing endlessly through the empty chamber. Seraya moved through the ruins with a trembling lamp in her hands. The flame hissed against the damp air, casting a thin gold halo around her. She whispered prayers under her breath, half-forgotten hymns her mother had sung when she was a child. Her robes clung to her skin, cold and heavy with seawater. Every step she took echoed, hollow and lonely. She called for the oracle, but only her own voice answered, carried back to her by the wind. When she reached the tower, she found the oracle kneeling before the heart. The crystal still pulsed faintly, its glow washing her face in soft blue light. Her silver hair clung to her shoulders, her eyes open but distant, as if she were watching something far beyond the room. "The sea is calm," the oracle whispered, her voice fragile as thread. "But calm is only the moment between breaths." Outside, the tide began to rise again, slowly, quietly. The ocean was patient. It didn't crash or rage. It climbed. The water licked the edges of the marble steps, crept through doorways, filled the canals until they overflowed. The city didn't fight it. It simply sank, inch by inch, as if surrendering. The sound was strange, soft, almost tender, the hiss of bubbles, the groan of stone, the whisper of waves sliding through corridors. Seraya knelt beside the oracle, tears mixing with seawater on her cheeks. She said, "We can escape. There are ships." But the oracle shook her head, her gaze fixed on the dimming crystal. "There is nowhere left to go," she murmured. "We are part of it now. The sea takes back what it lent." A sudden rumble rolled through the ground, deep and distant. The heart's light flared once more, not bright, but mournful, casting long shadows across the broken floor. Then came a sound unlike any thunder, a low, resonant note that seemed to rise from the ocean floor itself. It vibrated through the air, through the stone, through the body, not heard, but felt. And then, silence. The oracle closed her eyes. "It's done," she whispered. "The gods
have remembered their promise. The heart stopped pulsing, its glow faded to a dim ember, barely visible through the mist. A single tear slid down the oracle's cheek as she fell still beside it, her hand resting on the cold surface. Seraya cried out, but her voice broke in the soundless air. Outside, the last remaining towers of Atlantis vanished beneath the rising tide. The sea was no longer angry, only infinite. The smell of salt grew stronger, wrapping the city in a shroud of memory. The water entered every home, every hallway, every forgotten dream, and as it covered the final rooftops, the light of the heart vanished completely, swallowed by the dark. For a moment, there was nothing, no movement, no sound, just the quiet weight of eternity pressing down. Then, from deep below, the faintest shimmer, a pulse, soft and slow, like a memory that refused to die. The ocean shifted, its surface rippling gently, and the moon broke through the clouds, scattering pale light across the waves. The city was gone, but its echo remained, in the rhythm of the sea, in the hush between tides, in the unspoken language of silence. The night was still. The ocean had reclaimed what was once its own, but even in its depths it carried Atlantis not as ruin, but as remembrance. The waves rose and fell, the world turned, and the ocean kept its secret.
When the last tower of Atlantis slipped beneath the waves, the ocean did not roar, it sighed, a long trembling breath that seemed to stretch through eternity. The surface rippled once, then grew still. The storm clouds drifted apart, letting the first shy rays of dawn spill across the water. The golden light shimmered gently over the sea's surface, and for a moment it looked as if the world itself was holding its breath. Beneath that calm, the ruins of the city glowed faintly, the marble streets now veiled in shadow and seaweed, the crystal chambers filled with drifting silt and silence. Schools of fish wove through the arches where once people walked, their silver scales flickering like living stars in the dim blue light. The water carried the scent of salt and stone, heavy, yet strangely clean, as if washing away the last traces of pride and pain. The ocean floor began to change, slowly and gently. Sand rolled across the fallen statues, blanketing them like soft snow. Coral began to grow along the carved edges of broken columns, blooming in ghostly colors, pale pinks, muted blues, and deep violet. Each wave brought new life, small and curious, as though the sea itself was cradling the ruins in forgiveness. The once bright heart of Atlantis lay dim and half buried beneath the sand. But sometimes, when the current passed just right, a faint pulse shimmered within it, like the echo of a heartbeat too far away to hear. The light would flicker once, then fade again, hidden beneath layers of time. The ocean has a strange way of keeping secrets. It hides things not out of cruelty, but protection, folding them into its depths until even memory becomes part of the tide. The sea began to hum softly again, the sound of distant currents weaving through rock and reef. It was a melody without words, a lullaby for what once was. Years passed, then centuries. The marble turned to coral, the
the streets to sand, the towers leaned until they were no more than ridges beneath the waves. The scent of salt mingled with the sweetness of kelp and the faint metallic tang of stone. The sea creatures came and went, dolphins gliding through the water like gentle ghosts, whales passing overhead, their songs echoing through the deep, long and low and full of memory. The ocean remembered. Every current that touched the ruins carried a story of laughter, of songs, of light that once danced through crystal halls. Sometimes, on nights when the moon was full, the reflection on the surface seemed to tremble, as though something beneath was stirring, reaching towards the stars it used to mirror. And in the quietest corners of the sea, something began to grow. Not just coral or life, but myth. The ocean whispered to the winds, and the winds carried it to distant shores. The waves washed over sleeping villages, leaving behind shells that glowed faintly in moonlight. Children would find them in the morning, holding them to their ears, hearing faint echoes of music that didn't belong to their world. Some said it was the sound of the sea itself. Others, the song of a lost city calling home. The truth didn't matter. What mattered was that it lived on. The myth began to spread across islands, across deserts, across ages. Atlantis became not a place, but a memory the world couldn't let go of. The ocean, patient and eternal, kept the secret safe. Its waters shimmered with the soft rhythm of sleep, slow, deep, endless. The moon drifted across the sky, painting silver ribbons on the waves. The world above forgot, but the sea beneath never did. And somewhere, far below, beyond the reach of sunlight, the faintest light pulsed once more, soft, blue, and endless, like a dream that refused to die. Atlantis was gone, but in the heart of the sleeping sea, it was only resting.
Centuries passed, then millennia. The tides continued their endless rhythm, rising and falling like the slow beating of the world's heart. Above the waves, empires rose and vanished, mountains shifted, and stars burned out. Yet, beneath the calm shimmer of the ocean, the ruins of Atlantis slept untouched, wrapped in the patient silence of time. The water was cool and gentle, drifting through the empty arches and forgotten halls, carrying whispers instead of voices. The scent of the deep had changed, no longer the sharp tang of salt and stone, but something softer, almost sweet, like rain sinking into ancient earth. Light still filtered down from above, pale and scattered, dancing across coral-covered walls. Tiny fish darted through the glow, scales flashing like broken shards of sunlight. It was as if the sea itself was breathing in color again, slow, deliberate, remembering what beauty once meant. The ocean didn't mourn anymore. It simply was, still, eternal, holding memory the way one holds a lullaby. But memory has a way of finding its way back to the surface. Far above, sailors began to tell stories. They spoke of strange shapes beneath the waves, of outlines of towers glimpsed through the blue, of faint glimmers that rose from the deep on moonless nights. Some said they'd heard music drifting from nowhere, a low, haunting melody that curled around their ships like fog. Others swore they saw eyes watching from below, not human, but not entirely unknown. Humans have always loved their mysteries, and so they named it Atlantis, a lost world, a forgotten dream. They argued over where it was, what it meant, who destroyed it. Some called it legend, others truth. But to the ocean, it didn't matter. The story had returned, not as history, but as an echo. In that echo, Atlantis began to live again, not through walls or towers, but through imagination. The sound of the waves became its language. The glow of sunrise on the sea became its light. And every story told, every song sung in its name was another ripple across the endless surface of memory. Sometimes, when the wind is still and the moon sits low, the sea seems to hum, a faint vibration that runs through the water, through the air, through the heart. Those who stand by the shore swear they can feel it, not quite sound, not quite silence. It's the ocean remembering, not in sorrow, but in longing, because even eternity dreams of what it once loved. Deep beneath, the heart still lies buried, faintly glowing, not enough to be seen by the eye, only felt. Its pulse sinks with the rhythm of the tides, slow and eternal. Each beat carries a story upward, into the waves, into the wind. The ocean keeps whispering it, again and again, in every language, to anyone who dares to listen closely enough. And perhaps that's what the myth truly is. Not a warning, not a tragedy, but a promise. A promise that beauty, no matter how deeply it sinks, never disappears. It only changes shape, waiting to be found again. The ocean holds it all. The laughter, the ruin, the silence, the light. And when it dreams, the waves curl gently over the ruins like a mother's hand over her child. The scent of salt drifts softly through the air, mingling with the cool breath of night. The stars shimmer above the horizon, their reflections trembling on the surface like forgotten memories trying to rise. Atlantis lives there. Not beneath the sea, not in books, but in that fragile space between memory and myth. It breathes in the hush before dawn, in the murmur of waves, in the echo that remains long after sound has faded. The ocean remembers, and as long as someone, somewhere, listens to its whisper, Atlantis will never truly be gone. Good night, traveler. The tide is gentle tonight. Sleep well, for the sea still dreams of what it once was.